Hello and welcome to another edition of the Sofa Sports News Football Show, brought to you by the FNX Network. In part one this week, we'll be discussing the pressure Ronald Koeman finds himself under, having spent in excess of 140 million this summer, and the sacking of Carlo Ancelotti. In part two, we'll be reflecting on Delle Alli's dive and Olivier Giroud's 100th goal for the Arsenal. Part three, we'll look back at Chelsea versus Manchester City and discuss whether Roy Hodgson can steady the ship at Crystal Palace. And last but not least, in part four, we'll be touching on the major talking points from Serie and La Liga, including the extraordinary scenes that meant Barcelona had to play in an empty Camp Nou. And to finish off, a bit of fun as the quizmaster himself puts our knowledge to the test. I'm joined this evening by SofaSportsNews.com's very own Dan De Luca.
Hello.
Simon Alavi.
Hello, sir.
And Tim Curtis.
Hello.
I trust you boys are all well. How's things going?
Good.
Yeah, good, man. Yeah, good.
Good. Glad to hear. Everyone's doing fine. We're recording via the internet, so I'd like to apologise in advance for any sound issues. I know we had a couple of things last week. Unfortunately, it was out of my control. Despite my best endeavours to edit them out, I just couldn't get rid of them. So we're going to start off on the blue half of Merseyside, and a string of bad results has left Ronald Koeman in something of a sticky situation. The Dutchman was backed financially over the summer, but has only won 2 of his opening 7 Premier League games. They find themselves in 16th place and currently struggling in the Europa League. So the Everton boss, understandably, has come under fire. Before I ask the panel, I want to turn your attention to our Twitter poll, which we put out the other day. And the question was, is Ronald Koeman the right man to take Everton forward? 33% of you said yes, but 67% of you said no. De Luca, what are your thoughts? Is Ronald Koeman the right man for Everton?
Yeah, I rate Ronald Koeman. I think he's a really good manager. I think he's done well. I remember him as a player. He's exactly the sort of player you'd identify as someone likely to go on and have a good managerial career. He's always held himself well in interviews. He's tactically astute. I think he's having a really, really bad run. And I feel a little bit sorry for him, to be honest. He looks like he doesn't know what to do. And you could say because of that, then he's not the right man. But he's not had a very good summer. He had an okay start to the season and he's hit a bit of bad form. But there's enough in that man to be able to turn it around. And like you always say when talking about Arsenal, who is going to come in? Who is going to come in right now who's better than Ronald Koeman? I think it'd be very, very early if they pulled the trigger, I've got to be honest.
Alavi, what about yourself? Alavi, you're on mute, mate.
Yeah, good start. That was for the make sure we don't have sound interference.
Yeah,
I can say that is the most sensible thing Alavi said since the pod began.
I think he should. I think he should leave his off mute because I've got a feeling that's going to happen a few times tonight.
Well, might as well when Dan starts the point. No one will get a word in anyway. So, all right, I want to ask you: how many games in the Premier League have Everton lost that they should have lost? And I can only think of Burnley. I think this has all been hyped well out of proportion. They lost to the teams in the top 6 that they should lose to, apart from the best team in the league, who they managed to draw with. They've beaten your Stokes, they've beaten Bournemouth. The only team they've lost to is Burnley. And Burnley are a half-decent outfit who are organised. They play the same back four. Sean Dyche has been touted as an England manager one day. So it's very, very difficult. You know, Harry, we had that Lukaku debate some time ago, just me and you. And when you lose a 25-goal-a-season man, it's difficult for any club. Say United, when they lost Ibrahimovic to injury, they're still going to score an X amount of goals from other players. You know, Lukaku scored the majority of Everton's goals. So when you take him away, obviously it's going to be difficult to replace him. Now, they've spent a lot of the money on Sigurdsson and Klaassen, which you have to admit, he hasn't done well in the transfer business if he's gone with those two to replace Lukaku and with like 10, 20 million to spare. But I feel sorry for him because everyone's talking about a lack of pace up front. He brings in 2 quick players up front. Then he's, been let down by Schneiderlin and Sigurdsson in the creative roles and not firing at all. So I feel sorry for him in a way. I do think he's the right man to take them forward. The Everton crowd clearly got on their back, so I'm pleased that their next game is an away game against Palace, I believe. Not Palace, Brighton, before they Brighton away before they play Arsenal. And it would be good for them to get an away game, get the confidence going. But like I said, look at the fixtures. The only team that they lost to, that they in theory should have lost to, is Burnley. It's one game. Big deal.
That's a fair point. I mean, they have played Manchester City, Manchester United, Chelsea, and Spurs. So, as well as obviously Manchester City. So you need to understand that. I take that point on board. You said they've brought in 2 quick players up front. Who was you referring to?
No. So I think the last game, who they played, Niesa and the young kid, Lewis Calvin.
Calvert-Lewin.
Yeah. Lewis Calvin, Alavi at his finest.
Yeah. What's his name? I don't even know. But but they're too young. You can't rely on them, can you?
Yeah, fair point. Tim, what about yourself? What's your take on the whole Ronald Koeman situation?
Yeah, I agree with Alavi. I think that the teams that they've played in the Premier League, certainly, barring Burnley, you'd expect them to finish beneath those teams anyway, in my opinion. So I think now the marker has to be, once this international break's finished, then you really hone in on Koeman, the team, the performances. I think, as Alavi says, if you're going to Brighton, that game is going to be looked at with an absolute microscope because, if they come a cropper there, then the pressure is incredibly high. If they don't win that game and then go into the Arsenal game, if I'm right in thinking that is the game after that, then it's backs against the wall for Koeman. But I like him. I really like him. I think the coming through the Barcelona philosophy and everything that he will have learned in his time there. And you can see the managers who played for Barcelona and what they've taken from that. And I think that's kind of, championed from Cruyff, etc. That they look like good quality managers that can do something. So I think he just needs a bit of time after this international break. And I think they'll come good. But I think you're right as well. They haven't replaced Lukaku, and it would have been difficult to anyway. To draw a player of that caliber to Everton, so I think you've got to take that into consideration as well.
I think it's Brighton. By the way, don't take.
It is Brighton.
I think it is Brighton.
Yeah,
okay.
It is. I always double check Alavi facts.
Yeah.
I think it's deeper than just replacing Lukaku though, because a striker goes. I didn't think Rooney was a good signing. I think if he hadn't played for Everton before, everyone would have been scratching their heads. I think that's one thing I would say. The fact he played for Everton before, everyone thought it's great. He's returning home. He's going to be a success. He scored a couple of goals early on. That is a striker who's not scoring goals anymore. Hence, he's leaving Manchester United. That was never a good signing. But there seems to be this big panic to replace attacking players with attacking players. The problem with Everton is that, again, for me, is their back line. You've got Ashley Williams. He's terrible. He's a terrible defender. I don't think he's ever been a good defender. He's been a passable defender at times at Swansea, and he was past his best there. He wears his heart on his sleeve for Wales, but he is a terrible defender, and he's out of form. Jagielka's getting old. Baines is getting old. Coleman's out of the game at the moment with a horrific leg break. You look for defensive solidity to start building new teams from. You can't go around splashing the cash on a load of midfielders and hope it's going to click. Sigurdsson was a good signing for Everton. I stand by that. If you look at the number 10s playing behind the striker who were obtainable to Everton, he was the best one in terms of ability. And they got him. Yeah, they had to pay a few quid, but it was worth it. Davy Klaassen, you don't know how it's going to work out. It's a risk, but why not take it? And there's a couple of signings that haven't worked out for him. But for me, now they're in a negative spiral. And the confidence going forward starts with having faith in your back line. Pickford seemed like a good signing, but how's he feeling at the moment? He's come to Everton. He could have gone to a lot of clubs. He's gone for first team football. He's got a defence in front of him that's not working, an attack that's not scoring goals, and it's all going to go wrong very, very quickly for Everton. I think Brighton is the worst fixture they could have next week. It's the worst possible game because I know they were appalling defensively against Arsenal, but they're going to try and frustrate. They're not going to leave many openings. And players there will be doubting themselves. So I'm really worried for Everton. I think it'd be wrong to get rid of Koeman so soon, but I just can't see a way out of this at the moment for him.
Yeah, no doubt. It's a sticky situation, but it has to be said that despite the scrutiny that he's come under, like from the media, Everton's majority shareholder Farhad Moshiri has publicly backed his manager, and I mean that's always nice to see. But we must have learnt by now not to always trust what the chairman of clubs say, or the shareholders or owners or whatever you want to call them these days. So it remains to be seen what's going to happen at Everton. And that's an interesting one and something we should be keeping our eye on. Carlo Ancelotti was given his marching orders by Bayern Munich last week. The Italian is regarded as one of the best managers in the world, and so many were left shocked by the decision. Bayern have stuttered in the Bundesliga so far, but surely they've jumped the gun by sacking him in September. De Luca, you're Italian. Let's start with you. You know, I'm sure, quite a bit about Carlo Ancelotti, and you followed his career, I'd imagine. So were you shocked to hear that he'd been given the boot so early?
Yeah, I thought the timing was a little bit weird. Like, he's just lost to PSG, which right now is almost understandable. We're not sure how good PSG were going to be, how everyone would gel. We found out pretty quickly, and the managers paid the price. It seemed a weird time to sack him. I can only assume something's gone on there in the summer, and he weren't quite happy. I can't think what, though, to be honest. They've got a good squad. They've got the best squad in Germany, and he is still the best active manager in the world today, in my opinion. And there's a lot of things you can base that on, but you know, a couple of Champions League trophies under his belt, he's won wherever he's been, and yeah, I think it's strange. I don't know who they're going to bring in, but you know, they're still going to be all right, aren't they? And Ancelotti, I'm sure, will have a lot of job offers in the very near future. But
yeah, I mean, there were multiple reports sort of flying around that Carlo did lose the players, and that happened supposedly at the back end of last season, and he's been fighting an uphill battle ever since. I read some quote today from Ian Robben, don't know if it's true, but something along the lines of him saying that his kids' youth team put on better training sessions than Carlo Ancelotti. Don't know if that's a real quote. Who knows? Alavi, who would you like to see take the job?
That quote you said, that is apparently true, just before I tell you, because apparently Boateng, Robben and Ribéry have all fallen out with him, and it was them being overlooked that led to his sacking. Again, just a rumour, and we maybe went on the same ESPN site, I don't know, but that's apparently why. So in terms of taking a job, so I'll take the obvious ones out from the Premiership, who could be Klopp and even Poch. Not to worry you, Dan, but I have heard those two names going about. Probably the former Borussia Dortmund manager, guy called Tuchel, is being tipped to take over from...
He's done it again.
What's his name? I'll just call him... Was it Tuchel?
Thomas Tuchel, but yeah, go on, carry on.
Oh, yeah. Well, it sounds better, Tuchel. I'll just do it on purpose now, mate.
I agree with Alavi this time. He should be called Tuchel.
Yeah.
No doubt about that.
Well, if he was French, he might be called Tuchel, but he's not. So let's scrap that. Come on,
you can't
Thomas.
name a player outside of Arsenal, so I'm trying to educate you. So he left Dortmund when last May. Either him or I won't even try and say the Hoffenheim's manager, Nagelsmann.
Julian Nagelsmann.
Yeah, Nagelsmann. Yeah. I think he's 30 years old, which is crazy for a manager, but he's someone who, is taking them from the brink of relegation some time ago, and now I think they're joint third, I think, or joint second. They're high up in the Bundesliga, so he's doing well with them. I don't know, maybe the Monaco manager, is it Yardim? He's the only one I can think of. Maybe it's between those three. Maybe the assistant manager. Sometimes the assistant manager is familiar with the club, but can he sort of break that boundary and become the main man rather than the number two, Sagnol, something like that.
Willy Sagnol's taken over as a caretaker.
Yeah, but whether he gets it full time, they haven't come out and said. The only one I think of is possibly the Favre, the guy who's managing Nice. That's it. They're the only ones. But none of them are Ancelotti, are they? You're talking about someone you would have at Arsenal, Harry. You're talking about someone who, Tim, if Mourinho left in a couple of years and they told you that Ancelotti was coming in, you'd be quite pleased. Same with Dan. if Pochettino went off to Madrid, and Ancelotti fancied the Spurs job, you'd be over the moon. So all three of you support three different clubs who would rate this guy, and I've listed you managers who, all right, not with my pronunciation withstanding, but no one would be able to name most of them anyway. So it just seems like a crazy one, and I can only think it was the Chelsea syndrome of a couple of years ago, where the big time Charlies at the club have forced the manager out, and it's just a shame that football tends to do that these days.
Another manager whose name is being bandied about, but more so on a sort of with a view to a temporary contract, is Louis van Gaal, believe it or not. I've read that in a few places this evening. It looks like if they are to go for Nagelsmann, who may not be allowed to leave Hoffenheim before the season ends, that could be an option just to plug the hole in the meantime. Tim, what did you make of the Ancelotti sacking? Because were you as shocked as we were?
I think there'd been a bit of talk about it. I think the powers that be had started to generate a bit of a rumour mill saying that things weren't the best behind the scene. I think Bayern as a whole have struggled to keep their private goings on private. I know that Lewandowski said quite a lot at the start of the season, didn't he, about maybe him leaving, and he was shot down by some of the Bayern hierarchy. I think we've all been on the same ESPN website because I saw the Robin quotes as well. I think we'll all agree that for me personally, Ancelotti's credentials speak for themselves, and I think for a manager of that high caliber, he's one of the most likable out of the top managers in world football at the moment. I just don't really understand it. So yeah, I think I was a little bit shocked, because you look around and you go, so who steps in? I know you went through a few names there, but Bayern Munich, huge club still, I mean, to say that his training sessions were like the worse than the youth teams, then I don't know about that. With those kind of training sessions, don't get you that many Champions League. So something must have gone on behind the scenes, I think, and maybe a bit of player power and a bit of unrest. But I sense to be at that level, he must have wanted to do things one way, and if that's not the way of those that can make those decisions, then I suppose it's not going to gel.
Yep. Interesting. Guys, before we move on to the next topic, I'm just going to go around the panel quickly. Not who you want, but who do you think will actually take the job? Dan?
Louis van Gaal.
Just because he won the league with him all that time ago? Surely not.
I just think out of the names you've listed, he's the only one that's credible, as weird as that sounds.
Okay, Alavi?
I reckon the Hoffenheim manager.
Nagelsmann. Bearing in mind that he probably won't be allowed to leave Hoffenheim until then. I personally think that Van Gaal will take over on a temporary basis until the end of the season, when they can then get someone with a view to a more long-term sort of future. Tim, who do you expect to take the hot seat?
Our old boss Van Gaal. I think he's gonna step in there. And again, I probably agree with that. I don't think it's a long-term fix, really. But it's so easy, isn't it? He knows the club, he knows the workings, and I think it will most likely be him.
Great. So that's 3 out of 4 of us going with big old Louis, King Louis. That brings us to the end of part 1. We'll be back right after this. Olivier Giroud scored his 100th goal for Arsenal at the Borisov Arena on Thursday night, becoming the 19th man to reach that milestone for the Gunners. Despite being labelled as not good enough and as an inadequate replacement for Robin van Persie, the Frenchman got to the 100 mark in fewer games than Van Persie. Just the 1 game less, but hey, they all count, I guess. And it's also worth noting that a greater percentage of Giroud's appearances have come as a substitute, which makes it even more impressive. Dan, if I was to say to you Giroud is the most underrated striker in the Premier League, how would you respond to that comment? Dan? Sorry, Dan, start again. We lost you for a second.
Underrated, for sure.
Sorry, Dan.
Sorry, he's up there. Most underrated. There's no doubt about that whatsoever. In terms of underrated strikers, it's hard to think of anyone more underrated. He's a great striker. I was wrong about Olivier Giroud. I did think he cut it. Alex, I was wrong, which is some channel could take a lesson from. But he scores goals. He's naive wanting to. I think Arsene Wenger has found from a starting position, but the fact he understands his role, he's adapted to it, and he's still thriving. I think it's a fantastic to our football club. Got him on the book. He's able to contribute with go any club. Great. So I'm doing at the moment. I really am.
Dan, I'm just going to move over to Alavi on that one because your connection's gone a bit funny. Alavi, if I was to say to you, Giroud's the most underrated striker, what would you say in response to that?
I'll say he's one of the most underrated. I'll probably have to really go through the sort of Premier League. I think possibly Jesus is the most underrated because he's still in Aguero's shadow somewhat. However, as an Arsenal fan, I'm sure you can see playing with pace, dynamism is all well and good. But if your opposition defence sits deep, like they often do against you guys, suffocate with space in behind, camp on the edge of their box, remain disciplined, sound in their defensive structure. Sometimes you need that, not a brute, because that's unfair on Giroud, but it gives you another element of playing, doesn't it? Him and Lacazette are completely different strikers, two very different players. And you remember the Sunderland game, Harry, if you want to talk about underrated, someone changing a game, you remember that from last year, right? You looked like you were going to drop 2 valuable points, and Giroud came on, and a few touches, 5-6 minutes, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you ended up winning the game pretty much down to his own input and his display. Now, I know Dan said it was an obvious thing to bring Giroud on, but he does make a difference. Now, it's not always going to work out that way. I wouldn't play him against Chelsea. I wouldn't play him against Spurs when Arsenal are going to need to hit the Blues back line and with fast breaks, or they need to outpace Spurs and outpress them. That's where someone like a static Giroud, he's not going to help you, but he's definitely underrated. All right, the most underrated, I don't know, maybe Tim will have something to say about that with how well someone like Rashford is playing at the moment, but he's definitely up there, and no one really dislikes him. That's the other thing. He's done well, just sort of sitting on the bench, waiting for his time. Always happy to be the number 2. So with looks like that, it's hard to dislike him, isn't it? As well, he's not exactly getting a night bus home or after a night out in London, is he? So yeah, no, he's a cool guy.
Tim, what are your thoughts on Olivier Giroud? What would you say are his biggest strengths and maybe even his biggest weaknesses?
Well, I mean, to be honest, I'd probably take myself back to Arsenal United last season. I was at the game, and I believe it was the dying seconds that he saved yourselves there. So for me, impact. I think his biggest strength is coming on. He's a physical presence, and he's a big guy with great technique. So I mean, I think it was a scissor kick he scored to rival Mkhitaryan's last season. He's got that in the locker. He causes defences trouble. He causes big defenders trouble as well. So I think that's one of his strengths, his presence, as well as his ability with his left and right foot. In terms of his weakness, I think it's just in the games like your Chelsea matches, etc., the reasons that he doesn't start those games or tends not to because he can't quite pull the defenders left and right like you require, maybe getting in behind when the ball goes long, in behind the defender, and it needs someone to track that, to stretch the defence, the opposing defence. And I think that's potentially his weakness, but he's not utilised for that. So, I think he's underrated. I touch on the Rashford point there from Alavi. I think with Rashford, I think we know he's going to come good. I wouldn't put him into the underrated bracket. I think we're quite aware of what he's going to bring to the table. But I like Giroud, and I think he'll continue to do what he's been doing for Arsenal.
Yeah, and I guess, he's worked hard. He's worked his way to where he is now. He started his career at Grenoble, went on to play for Tours, and eventually was a part of that Montpellier side that shocked France and took the title. Dan, I think we've got you back now. Dan, Olivier Giroud, would you have him at Spurs? Oh, no, he's gone again.
Yeah,
Oh.
yeah, in a heartbeat. In a heartbeat.
Dan, we've lost you again. We've lost you again, mate. Let's jump on to the next one. Delle Alli was at the centre of another controversial incident this weekend as the England international was booked for diving during Spurs' trip to Huddersfield. Anyone who's seen the incident can't deny that it was an attempt to gain an advantage by simulation, and he was deservedly shown a yellow card. This is not the first time Dele has been involved in this kind of incident, but when questioned, Pochettino took a leaf out of Arsene Wenger's book and told the media post-match that he didn't see the incident, but that in fact, if Ali had dived, it was something he would need to learn from. Tim, have you seen the incident? What did you make of it? It's obviously a dive, isn't it?
I've seen the incident. It's shocking, really, in my opinion. Absolutely shocking. He's gone towards him, just nicked the ball to the left, hasn't he, and left that right leg trailing, left the knee on the keeper and just gone down. But it's shocking, in my opinion. Fully deserving of the yellow. Pochettino says he hasn't seen it. He will have now. Hopefully he's had a word. I just think it's embarrassing, personally. It's just, terrible. That's what I can say to that, really. Hopefully we don't see it continue.
Yeah. I mean, Alavi, Dele Alli's gained something of a reputation for this kind of thing now. Is the yellow card sufficient for someone who seems to be a repeat offender?
I think you have to take every case on its merit, on its own merit. So, in the middle of a game, obviously, I know we've talked about this on the Facebook group. You can't give larger or higher punishments for repeat defenders. I guess what you can do is start to retrospectively, and not just for diving, Harry, but you should be able to start to retrospectively change the decision of a referee. So, he's given a yellow there. Why he's dived that 3-0, I'll never know. He's given a yellow there. Well, why can't we just, if there has been a dive and the referee hasn't done their job, why can't we just retrospectively give them a red? I know at the moment the rule is a yellow card, but why can't we just make it a red? It will cut it out. And if a referee doesn't do their job and give them a red, then retrospective action can be taken.
Okay. Dan, Dele Alli, is this kind of thing starting to detract from the lad's ability? We're seeing these incidents all the time. There was the middle finger. He's dived a couple of times now. Is it got to his head?
Yeah, it has. I think he's a very silly, juvenile boy. I don't think he's grown up fully. The dive was poor, as Tim said. There's no need for it. You're 3-0 up at Huddersfield. I mean, show a little bit of class. It's disappointing. We don't need that. I think with Dele Alli, I think he's struggling that he's not the main man in the spotlight. I think any bit of spotlight seems to appeal to him. And all these sort of things, the dive, whatever it may be, trying to nutmeg players. I know he pulls it off more often than not, but it's always something to detract from not being the main man. I think he needs to calm down a little bit. Everyone can see that. He needs to stop getting himself in trouble because opponents are going to target him more. And yeah, I would retrospectively ban him. I think if you dive in the box, you should get a 1-game ban. If you are a defender and you prevent a goal-scoring opportunity, you get a red card. If you're trying to gain a goal-scoring opportunity, then you should be treated the same. It's not just Dele Alli who does it, but it's 2 or 3 now involving him, and he has got away with them. On the whole, we need to start seeing these sort of dives that are clear and obvious cheats, attempts to cheat the referee and another football team who are 3-0 down, by the way. Let's cut it out. Let's cut it out. Otherwise, it's going to go on and on and on and on. And Moses will dive in an FA Cup final, and it might not be spotted. And suddenly you've got people cheating their way to trophies. You don't want to see that. So
unless they play Arsenal in the final.
Look, Pochettino has come out and had a go at him, so I think that's a bit unfair saying that he didn't see it. No, he did.
He's not really had to go at him.
He said he needs to learn.
He said if he has in fact dived, he would need to learn from this. That's what he said. And then he's gone on and said that the team have been working on fair play. Well, I'm assuming Dele Alli was off sick that day because he seems to do it time and time again.
Well, they've obviously all learned from Pires, who started the whole thing, brought it over into the country, and
that's it. Blame the
spiraled down.
The
no, I'm just blaming Pires. But I'm the most foreign one here, believe me. But it was Pires.
I think as far as an opposition manager's comment goes, that's as good as you're going to get.
Exactly.
Right? You look at the flip side of this. The manager in the Premier League who is most anti-diving publicly is Tony Pulis. He has come out after games and he has castigated his own players for diving. A big incident with Callum McManaman, I recall, about 3 or 4 seasons back. The flip side of that is Jay Rodriguez last week gets fouled, stays up, doesn't get a penalty. So there's a balance to find. I'm not comparing Dele Alli with that because there was no foul, no contact, and he's clearly looking for it and trying to cheat. So in terms of what Pochettino said, I've got no issue with that. But I think it's down to the FA now to stamp this out because there is too much for managers to gain by encouraging players to go down. And we've seen it enough times. If you don't go down, you do not get the decision that you deserve sometimes. So I think the responsibility is on the FA, who can see the same videos that we see. I mean, we all saw it in real time, this one. But everyone can see that's a dive. Do something about it. It's easy.
Fair enough.
It's not difficult.
I think if there's a worst case of a penalty or do you know what I mean? Like if you risk a yellow card to get a penalty, it's a no-brainer.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. The FA are driving all of the wrong behaviour here because if there was a retrospective, but this rubbish that if the referees booked you, there can't be retrospective action is ridiculous. I don't know whose bright idea was that. If Dele Alli now was to face a 3-game ban, I guarantee you he wouldn't be doing that next week.
The reason for it, Harry, is because you can't start undermining the refs.
Well, you can if they're not doing their jobs properly.
But they are doing their jobs for a reason.
But they're not.
The rule is a yellow card.
Yeah, but the fact is that if players weren't getting away with this for so long, then players wouldn't even be attempting it.
But that ref has done his job properly.
Yeah,
what my point about the red card was,
on this particular occasion,
it needs to be a red card so that they don't do it. But this ref has actually done his job.
Yeah, on this particular occasion. But this is a consequence of bad refereeing over the years. And that is why players feel they can get away with conning the referees.
But I think it's beyond bad refereeing. I hate referees. I blame referees for everything. But this is beyond refereeing. This is bad fans. This is bad pundits. This is bad co-commentators. They're the worst co-commentators. A co-commentator every time will say, oh, if he went down there, oh, but there's a little bit of contact. And they're the decisions where the 3-game ban falls down. Because there still has to be a subjective opinion that says, did that guy leave his leg trailing on purpose? Was that contact enough to knock him down? Etc., etc., etc. And you're never, ever, ever going to get to the bottom of it. We could look at it and we'd be right 9 times out of 10. But if you're going to throw a 3-game ban at someone, it can only be for a clear-cut dive like Dele Alli's. But there are dives that are just as effective that get the penalty where you could argue there's been some contact. That's where we're always going to struggle with this issue.
Okay,
Tim, you must be seeing some diving with Ashley Young back in the side.
He's gone down a few times. I've questioned. I mean, to be honest, I would say when United players go down and it's a blatant dive, I don't support it. I just think it's embarrassing across the board, really. Yeah, it's shocking. But yeah, interesting. Ashley Young there, he's had a few wobbles.
Yeah, he's got legs of jelly, old Ashley Young. We did put a poll up in the Facebook group earlier on in the day on this matter. So I'm just going to read out a few comments from some of our listeners. Panny, who was on the show a couple of weeks ago, massive Spurs fan. He says the rule is if you dive, it's a yellow card. Whether he's done it once or a million times, the punishment shouldn't change. However, the fact he did it when we were 3-0 up just sums up his season so far. Hashtag clueless. Nick Nicolau says a yellow card is sufficient at the time, but he should have a 3-game ban retrospectively. It's the only way players would stop this bollocks, and maybe a 20k fine. Let's see how they like that. Rob Palmer agrees he should get a ban. Andy Andreas says the only way to effectively eliminate it would be for retrospective bans. Errol Chimen has sent us quite a complex answer, and he says if he dives 5 times and one of them earns him a penalty and he's taken 4 yellow cards, it's basically still worth it. So just imagine that Spurs won a game marginally because they were awarded one of those penalties. This is probably petty and very unlikely, he says, but if you are a repeat offender, then your card should be marked. Fair point, I suppose.
Well, doesn't it speak volume, Harry, that this is the first time in however many years that everyone on the site agreed about something?
Well, yeah. There is still a few comments where, they're saying he only deserved the yellow card. Believe me.
But I mean, taking that Spurs fan aside, the majority, 95%, were against,
Yeah, the majority don't want to see diving in our game. It's simple, but unfortunately, it's embedded itself. What can we do? Anyway, that brings us to the end of part 2. And in part 3, we'll be talking Chelsea versus City and Roy Hodgson's Mission Impossible. Back just after this. Pep Guardiola's City were brilliant at Stamford Bridge this Saturday, and Kevin De Bruyne's strike gave them all 3 points against title rivals Chelsea. It's fair to say Pep was pleased with his side's performance and praised individual players, in particular John Stones and Nicolas Otamendi, for the high line they kept, limiting the likes of Eden Hazard throughout the 90 minutes. Tim, how good were Manchester City, and is that a statement worthy of making them title favourites?
Yeah, I think it is. They were very, very good. Certainly for me, if you're going to talk dominant team, it was them. The game's dynamic changed, I have to admit, when Morata went off. It neutralised Chelsea's out, really. And for me, Hazard isn't fully fit. That's my opinion. And I think to bring him off, was it 10, 15 minutes towards the end he came off? If you're going to bring Hazard off at any point in a game of that standard, then I think, yeah, he wasn't up to match fitness. I think City, along with United, as a United fan, I think are out there at the front at the moment. I don't know if United have been tested yet, but for me, the performance that City put in against Chelsea was dominant, and I think they'll continue to get big scores against the lesser teams. And your Arsenals, I think they're going to fall. And the rest as well. I know it was a draw, but I think when it comes down to it, when they play the other big teams, I think City will continue to dominate.
Alavi, were Chelsea suffering from a bit of a Champions League hangover?
Well, he used that as the excuse, didn't he? He said that they had a much shorter rest. No, I just think City were that good, and you've got to give them credit in the sense that they lost their best player as he was out in a concert in Amsterdam. They lost probably their best fullback, or definitely the fullback in the best form. He's put Delph there. Jesus has come in, and they've still won 1-0. De Bruyne's, the fact that he took a touch, that he just needed one touch for that goal. That's what separates the best players. Your Aguero's who's so composed with that goal against QPR, and the fact that he just played that touch straight away, didn't need any 2-3 touches, just one flick, he was gone, received the ball again and scored. They were sensational, him and Silva. I do think Chelsea were negative. I mean, you remember, Dan, how negative Chelsea were against Spurs. They got the result. Yeah. When it doesn't go for you, it starts to, if it goes for you, you look like a genius. When it doesn't go for you, and you take off, or you have to take off Morata, and Batshuayi is still sitting on the bench, and you bring on Willian, and your back three don't push up at all, and you keep them. Because the idea of a back three, obviously, you want two of the central defenders, that outer ones, to at least push up a bit and go into midfield, and especially against City, you need to do that at times. If it doesn't work for you, you look very negative. And I think it's very difficult when you set out defensively. You've been training all week for it. You pick the players to complement that style. I think when you go 1-0 down, 2-0 down, I think it's very, very difficult to then adjust that and suddenly become attacking. The other way around, I've always thought it's a lot easier. I think it's easier for a team to be 1-0 up, shut up shop, bring a centre back on for a centre midfield or whatever, play 3 central defenders rather than 2. It's easier to do. The other way around, for me, it's a lot more difficult. And you can see why City are title favourites. They were just brilliant to watch.
Dan, is Kevin De Bruyne the best attacking midfield player in the league at the moment?
He probably is, and the nearest rival to that is probably coming from Manchester City as well. In that David Silva, you forget about him, but he's not getting any worse, is he? Alavi took my point away from me about earlier in the season, where I did say I weren't that impressed with Chelsea at Wembley against Tottenham, and they got away with one. Looking at Tottenham again in the semi-final of the FA Cup, Conte went with a weird strategy and got away with one thanks to some quality finishing from his players. Conte won't mind, but you don't always get away with it. He knows that. He looked at the situation, and for whatever reason, he decided the best way to get something from that game was to try and shut City out, and he nearly pulled it off again. But I would have liked him after 65, 70 minutes, where, to me, that game was going to end 1-0 to Manchester City. I would have liked to have seen him as the champion manager at home, maybe roll the dice and try something a little bit different. And in the end, they got what they deserved. And City were very good. And am I going to have to admit I was wrong about Pep Guardiola's defensive capabilities?
Well, yeah.
Because, some people on this panel can admit they're wrong, Harry. And we'll have to see. Give it a couple of weeks. So far, he's played 7 games. He's letting 2 goals.
I'm the host. I'm not supposed to admit anything. I don't give.
You can all admit you were wrong about John Stones and give me a public apology. Thank you. Just like you should have for David Luiz.
I think you need to go for pronunciation lessons and don't worry about anybody else.
John Stones, I can pronounce that.
I'm going to wait 1 more week. I'll meet 1 or 2 more weeks and see how the defence holds up. I'm still not convinced by the high line he's played. And I think, obviously, the amount of possession he gets, that might be enough to carry him through. But, they're exceeding my expectations at the back this season. And they were very good. They were very good on Sunday.
Okay. There was some more bad news to come out of Stamford Bridge today, as Alvaro Morata has been ruled out for about 6 weeks with a torn hamstring. Can Batshuayi, is that how we say his name? Batshuayi, fill the void? Will Conte trust him? Because he turned to Willian when the Spaniard limped off on Saturday. Or was that purely tactical, Tim?
Whether it's tactical or not, I don't know if you agree with me, guys. If the man at the top, the striker, of which there was only one for Chelsea at that point, if he comes off, forced off, and the only other next in line striker is overlooked for the winger, for me, that speaks volumes. I said it to my friends when I was watching the game. I said Batshuayi's confidence would have taken a huge knock there. I personally don't think he's up to it. I don't know what they'll do, really. Obviously, they'll have to go with him for the foreseeable games over that 6-week period. Luckily, they've got a week and a half of internationals, but still, that only still brings it to around a month. But no, I don't think he's good enough to fill in, and I don't think him not coming off to replace Morata will have done him any good.
Okay.
I don't know if I agree, because I think you have to take into account that they were playing City, Tim, and a City who, run you ragged in midfield.
Yeah.
You can see why he brought on someone who is a ball player to give him extra legs in midfield rather than a sort of target man up front. I'll get your point. Imagine you're him on the bench. It's like you're a reserve goalkeeper. You've been waiting all season for the keeper to get injured, and then they put the central defender in goal instead or something. I completely get your point, but you got to take into account they're playing City, and you've got to match like with like in the midfield sometimes.
I think there's a point that has been overlooked so far as well. We mentioned earlier that Hazard's not fully fit, and maybe that influences his decision as well, to get some extra legs in there to take the strain off of Hazard in the midfield, and throwing on Batshuayi probably wasn't going to assist with that. At the end of the day, he's got it wrong, and everyone watching when he put Willian on was a little disappointed. Let's be honest, we wanted to see a good open game of football between the champions and arguably the champions-elect this season, and an Italian manager was up to his old tricks again. It's up to him, but it's backfired. Strikers breed on confidence. So if Chelsea have got a couple of bad fixtures, and I'm sure Alavi will tell us who they've got next, if Batshuayi gets a goal or two, suddenly he's feeling a bit better about life. But it can't feel good watching
They've
that
got
number.
Palace at home next, so that's a game to pick him up.
Well, I mean, yeah, that's milk and cookies, isn't it? If you're a striker, you're absolutely delighted with that, aren't you? So it could work out all right for Batshuayi, but yeah, it won't have felt nice when he wasn't given the nod this week.
To be honest, I wasn't upset when he didn't bring on a striker because I had a bloody bet on 0-0, but unfortunately didn't go my way. Many turned their noses up when Roy Hodgson returned to the Premier League and took charge of a struggling Crystal Palace. Since the sacking of Ronald de Boer, the Eagles have played 3 league games, including 2 daunting fixtures against Manchester City and Man United, in which they conceded 9 and scored none. Their next challenge comes after the international break as they entertain Chelsea, so you can assume they'll probably come out of that one empty-handed too. Dan, is Roy the right man to lead Palace out of danger?
No, not at all. He might suffocate them out of danger. He's not going to lead them anywhere. I just can't understand the appointment. I don't. What are they trying to achieve? They're struggling to score goals. That's why they're in there. I know they've shipped some at the back, but they're struggling to score goals. They've not scored a goal. Not a single goal all season. That's ridiculous. Not a single goal. And you're looking at they've got players up front. You look 2 seasons ago, people were tipping Palace to finish 7th. They've got the same squad minus Balassi. They've got players. They've not scored a single goal. So who's going to galvanise attack? It's not Roy Hodgson. Roy Hodgson will tighten them up at the back. That's not going to be enough. They could draw 31 times 0-0 between now and the end of the season. They're not getting out. So it's a weird appointment. I think they're doomed. I don't think Roy Hodgson. I think he got very, very lucky at Fulham in a great escape. Very, very lucky. I'm not saying Roy Hodgson doesn't warrant another crack at a Premier League job, but to take away Frank de Boer and put Roy Hodgson in right now, I can't see how that's beneficial to anyone at Crystal Palace.
Okay, Tim, do you think Palace can survive?
For me, I think they're in desperate trouble, and I think their summer spending is, it's been very poor as well. I don't think that Hodgson, as you said, he's not going to lead anyone anywhere. I just think that I saw some pictures of him on the beach with his wife before the call came in, and that didn't look ideal. So I think for him, it's probably
him or his wife.
Well, neither. So I can only imagine he told back from the beach to turn up to take the first session, and to get Chelsea is not ideal either. But they're in some trouble.
I guess you've got to take into account that they're going to be missing Christian Benteke now. Wilfred Zaha's been missing, and I guess
Connor Wickham.
Connor Wickham, is that a miss? But anyway, I mean, you've got to take into account the fact that despite them being so poor so far, they're only actually 5 points off 17th place Leicester. So they're by no means doomed. Alavi?
But they're really scraping the barrel, Harry. I mean, they wanted maybe a player Dan would have heard of, a guy called Alberto Gilardino. He's a free agent. And he's, rather than going to Palace, he's opted to join Spezia. So, you know when players like that are rejecting you're in trouble. I don't know who is it they think they can rely on, because they've got that Ladapo guy. I don't know if they think that he's going to save their season, but they're in trouble. What I sort of disagree with Dan about the Fulham thing. I don't know where you got the unlucky from, because they were 2-0 down at half-time to City. They won 3-2. They then won their last 2 games. So if you look at the number of players who have come out since he got the job and complimented Roy Hodgson, players who have played under him, maybe this is his level. Maybe the England job was just too much for him, someone with all the wealth of experience around the world. Maybe this is his level. Maybe, he's proven he can do it in the Premiership before. Didn't he take Fulham to, a European Cup final?
Yeah.
Did they beat Juve on the way? The guy must have something about him. Sacked De Boer, and I know we go back to this, we have done since he got sacked, but you just don't sack a guy. It's not his fault if Scott Dan misses an open goal with a header, despite scoring sort of 14-yard headers for the last 3 years in the Premier League, or however long he's been there. You can't blame someone. Give someone more than 3-4 games to implement a new style. and then replace them with Roy Hodgson, like a bumbling guy who Tim doesn't like the look of on a beach. It's just mad. Crazy.
I mean, I personally think it's unfair to judge Roy on his England tenure because bigger names in the game have failed in that job. So I think it's slightly unfair to judge him on that. And as a manager, I think he's okay. I don't actually think he's that bad. And, I've got a soft spot for Crystal Palace, as everybody knows. And I want to see them survive. And I just think, when he took over, all right, he had that first fixture at home to Southampton. And unfortunately, they got beat. Maybe that fixture came too soon for him. But since then, they've had some horrible fixtures, Man City, Man United, and now they've got Chelsea. So if I'm being realistic, I didn't expect them to show any improvement until at least those 3 fixtures were out of the way anyway.
Why on earth then, if you're the Crystal Palace board, would you sack the previous manager before those 3 fixtures when you know the new manager is going to come in? He's probably going to get battered 3 times, and straight away the confidence is down, and everyone's looking and saying, "Can this fool and his wife in the bikini keep us up?" It's
because he needs to work on his. You need to give someone time on the training field. So even if he's narrowly losing or getting battered in these games, you need to give him time before you go into a game that you can win.
Yeah, okay.
You see what I mean?
I'll take your point then. So you're saying
it's a good point.
Yeah, okay. I'll take your good point, Alavi. I'll take your good point.
One a pod.
All right. I'm taking.
Normally to do with maths.
I'm just going to put your good point now on my mantelpiece, and it can stay there for a little while. It is a good point. It is a good point. But I would judge him on his performance at England, because why can you exclude that?
I'm not saying to exclude it, but I'm saying to only judge him on that, which a lot of people are doing, and to always point to that as a measure of Roy Hodgson, I think is unfair, because bigger managers in the game have failed at that job. So if someone's going to sit down and say to me, Roy Hodgson is a poor manager because of, his time at Fulham and whatnot, and his time abroad and whatever, and collate all those points, I would accept that argument. But what I can't take is when certain football fans, and it tends to be more the casual football fans, sit there and say that Roy Hodgson is a bad manager because he had a bad time with England. Well, loads of managers have had a bad time with England. So for me, that can't be solely what you judge him on. That's all I'm saying.
His season starts after Chelsea, doesn't it, Harry? I think you're right for once.
Thank you.
You're welcome. But you know what? They've got to go and beat Newcastle and West Ham, because then they go to, I think they're away to Spurs start of November. And then you'd think, and then Everton after that, who probably will start to pick up some form. So he's got 2 games there, 2 huge games, Newcastle and West Ham. He ain't getting anything at Spurs.
I'll love it if he beats them. I'll love it.
All right, Keegan.
Right, that brings us to the end of part 3. We'll be back in just a moment. Welcome back to the 4th and final part of the show. Let's go over to Simon Alavi for a La Liga update. Take yourself off mute this time, mate.
Yeah, all done. Right. So just before the Liga, we were going to do the Liga update before the weekend. I said, there probably won't be much to talk about with the fixtures, and I was wrong. Valencia managed to hold off Bilbao to move up to 3rd in the Liga with a 3-2 win. Goals were plenty at Anoeta. I think Sociedad and Betis ended 4-4. For Real Madrid, my favourite player, Mr. Isco, done the business against Espanyol. But the really, really big news was Barcelona won 3-0, but they ended up playing in an empty stadium because of a backdrop of a referendum, which was with respect to the Catalonian independence looming. I'm sure you saw the pictures, the riots. I mean, it was hilarious. I watched a bit in between. Well, that wasn't hilarious, but watching it on an empty stadium, was just hilarious. They going off cheering, and all you can hear was the ball boy. And it was just so weird to watch. I mean, for you, Harry, not so, because that's what you get every week at the Emirates. But it was a weird playing in a silent stadium. It really was. I've never actually seen it on such a big stadium like the Nou Camp. They looked good. They won 3-0. and Barcelona actually made the announcement that the doors would be closed for the match just minutes before kickoff. So imagine quite a few thousand fans were just outside waiting to go in. So hopefully we won't see something like that again. I don't really understand all the politics behind it. Basically meant the Nou Camp was empty.
Yeah, I guess so. And I guess it was good practice for Leo Messi, because if he's going to join Man City one day, he'll be playing in a stadium like that every week. So,
well, it was funny because they interviewed Messi after, and they said, "Oh, was it weird getting used to it?" And he said, "I've been to the Emirates plenty of times. Haven't you seen the number of times of Champions League we've been drawn there away?" So, one final bit in La Liga. This is just a transfer rumor. I don't know if you guys heard it come out. I think it was late last night, that apparently Madrid want to sign Lewandowski in January. Do they really need him?
Can only suggest that Benzema's on his way out. But if I'm not mistaken, Benzema seems to be Cristiano Ronaldo's love child. He loves having him in the team. Yeah. And if it keeps Ronaldo happy, I'm sure they'll leave him in there.
When I tell you the fee, have a guess of the fee. Go on, the three of you. That's been reported.
Take 175 million euros.
Go on, Harry.
I'm going to say 80.
Tim?
120. 120.
Oh, Tim wins it with 125.
Oh, incredible shout.
Yeah.
It's sick that we're discussing fees like that, isn't it?
This is what I mean. This is what I mean.
Oh, well. So it was another interesting weekend in Serie. Napoli continued their fine form with a 3-0 win over Cagliari, and De Luca's beloved Benevento suffered yet another defeat, this time at the hands of Inter. Vincenzo Montella's Milan side suffered a 2-0 home defeat at the hands of Roma. Edin Dzeko with the opener, and he's been in fantastic form since he moved to the Italian capital from Man City. Just a little thinking point to stick out there. Could we see Ancelotti returning to Milan if things go south for Montella? I think Montella didn't totally convince people at Fiorentina. And the more I watch his Milan side, I get the feeling that this job might be just a little bit too big for him. Elsewhere, Everton's Europa League conquerors, Atalanta held champions Juve to a draw. And that means Napoli sit top, 2 points clear. Italian football is on the up. There's no doubt about it. And the title race and the chase for the European places promise to be an exciting one. Got a bit of a pointless stat for you guys as well from around Europe this week. Of the top 5 leagues, the one with the most goals this weekend was La Liga, 34.
Obviously.
Serie, 33. Bundesliga, 32. La Liga, 34. Serie A, 33. Ligue 1 in France, 32. Bundesliga, 25. And the PL with a measly 22. There goes that entertainment theory out the window.
I think that's a one-off, surely.
I'll be interested to keep an eye on that, actually, over the season. See how that
trust me, as much as I defend La Liga, you don't see that Betis normally playing a 4-4 draw.
Yeah, I guess so. Last week, Alavi took us all by surprise. He somehow managed to pull the answer out of the bag to last week's quiz. And it's only fair he gets to ask the questions this time around. Just to clarify, I'm talking about when he named Jordi Gomez as the 5th Spaniard to score a Premier League hat-trick. Because when he answered David James, when we were talking about Premier League record appearance holders, Daniel De Luca himself provided him with a great assist by saying, "Is it a goalkeeper?" So I have to give you both credit for that one. It was a team effort. Alavi, fire away with your question.
Right, the question. And there's a tiebreaker if you guys don't get it. So I know, yeah. Everyone listening is just so excited, I can tell. Right, there's one team in the Football League. No cheating, Dan. Get back. See? This is it. You've got to watch these Italians. Right, there's one team in the Football League and the Premier League across those divisions, the letters of which make up the name you can't colour in.
What?
Okay.
The letters that make up the team you cannot colour in.
Okay, so think about this logically. There can be no A, no E, and no O of the vowels in the name, yeah?
I can't give you clues, but obviously, you're a longer...
That's a fact.
I should have just given it to the two people that can spell. So Dan and Tim, there is one team, right, in the Football League, including the Premier League, you can't colour in. Should have asked Harry Kane. He can colour in quite well, can't he?
He can chew crayons, that's for sure.
Yeah. Come on. If you don't get it, I've got a teaser tiebreaker.
What do you mean by you can't colour in? As in it's white?
Bloody hell, Harry.
I'm sorry, but it's too late in the evening.
Tim, do you get the question?
Yeah. You can't colour in YOUCANT.
Yeah.
Colour in. Yeah.
So
you have to colour it in. So like E, you can colour in. O, you can colour in.
Berry.
K, obviously you can't colour in.
No, berry. B, you can colour in, can't you?
You can colour in B. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, for all our children listening, please mind your language.
I'm lost.
Should be in bed. Should be in bed by now.
I need time to think about this one.
Yeah.
No.
It's a good one, isn't it?
It is a good one.
Does it include the second name? So like town or city? It's got to be a city.
The whole thing, yeah.
Yeah, it's something city.
There we are.
Yeah, it's got to be something city. So how many cities are there?
There's a bloody lot. Half the country's called city. Oh.
Do you want me to just tell you?
No, I don't need to tell me.
Guys, this pod can't go on all night. Alavi, break it.
Do you want me to tell you or not?
No, don't tell me. It can't be hard, can it? It's a city.
Dan, do you want to go disappear and come back?
Furious.
And I'll tell the others. He's gone. He's
going.
Right, shall I tell you two?
Yeah, go on, go for it.
Can you hear or not? No, you probably can't.
Probably
Whole city.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Good shout.
Hey, I know you'll be all using that, telling your wives and girlfriends that later.
I think we should just tell him. I don't get what he's... Or he
Dan, don't worry. You can tell me another time.
You can just tell him
look it up. Yeah. My teaser question, right? My tiebreaker, quickly. Who do you reckon Adebayor has played more games for? Spurs or Arsenal?
Arsenal.
Sure.
Dan?
Yeah. Yeah, it's got to be Arsenal.
Tim?
Arsenal for me.
Yeah, okay, but it was only by 12 games.
That's an easy question, though.
All right, but a lot of people forget that he was on loan at Spurs. It's actually 92 for Spurs and 104 for Arsenal. It's not actually that much different. 12 games, it's nothing. But anyway, the main question was the beep answer that I can't tell you.
He'll be thinking about that for days now.
De Luca doesn't sleep.
I just need my alphabet in front of me. It'd be fine.
Yeah.
Lend it to Harry. Yeah.
Just before we wrap up this week's edition of the Sofa Sports News
Whole
Show.
City.
He's got it. And Luca with a goal. Klinsmann celebration.
No, I'm not happy about that.
He slides on his belly.
I was thinking too obscure. I was thinking of like League Two sides. Waste of my time. Nightmare.
Yeah.
We'll give it to De Luca for next week.
We'll give it to De Luca. He actually got it properly, so it's only fair. Just before we wrap up this show, did anybody else see the yellow card incident in the French match between Angers and Lyon? Has anyone else seen this?
Yeah.
I posted it in the group. It was the most bizarre incident. So the refs run over to brandish a yellow card to the Brazilian defender Marcelo. And in the player's frustration, he's turned around and thrown an arm up in the air. But that action coincides with the ref lowering the card. And so he knocks the card out of the referee's hand. And the ref just basically loses his shit and pulls out the red card. Ridiculous. Surely that's got to
not
be
even
overturned.
Another yellow. He actually gave him a red.
Yeah, straight red.
Crazy.
Surely that's going to be overturned.
It has to be. I mean, there's got to be the odd bit of humour occasionally in football. And he wasn't even joking. It was just an accident. It reminded me of Gaza. Do you remember when... I don't know if you've seen the clip where Gaza
for Rangers.
The referee's yellow card. Yeah, for Rangers. He gives it to the ref. He shows him a yellow card as a joke. The yellow card from him and shows Gaza the yellow card.
Yeah.
Lighten up.
I tell you what can't be overturned. Lyon were 3-1 up at the time and they drew 3-0.
Yeah, that certainly can't be overturned. If you haven't seen that incident, guys, head over to our Facebook group, Sofa Sports News _ the Football Fan Network, and the video is in there somewhere. If you scroll down through the countless posts in there. You'll find it. Guys, that brings us to the end of the show. Big thank you to Dan De Luca, Simon Alavi, and Tim Curtis for joining us. Don't forget, if you're watching on YouTube or you're listening via iTunes, hit that subscribe button. Massive shout out to our partners, the FNX Network. And that's all, folks. Cheers.